Thanks for joining us in another busy night of news on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. I'm Rup Raj. The government shutdown has dominated the headlines the last couple of days, and with good reason. We're getting you up to speed with that, but there's a lot more going on that you need to know as well. There are still so many questions unanswered about the horrific attack on a church in Grand Blanc Township last weekend. The biggest of all, why? As investigators work to find those answers, we're getting perspective from former FBI counter-terror operative Eric O'Neill. Why they're staying so tight-lipped about an hour away and what we can expect moving forward. Plus, a funding fight at the state level with marijuana taking center stage. Lawmakers want to drastically increase the wholesale cannabis tax to pay for the roads. We're talking with Jerry Millen, who owns Greenhouse of Walled Lake, about the impact it would have. But we begin with the partial government shutdown because it is day 2 and the two sides don't seem any closer to a deal. You'll remember the White House threatened mass layoffs of federal workers instead of the normal furloughs that you usually see. And today, President Trump said they're looking at just that. He said on Truth Social that he met with the budget director to figure out which agencies should be cut and which should be permanent. The cuts should be permanent, he was implying. President Trump went on to say, quote, "I can't believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity." As you can imagine, this was the talk in our nation's capital today, as Republicans also repeated their false claim the Democrats shut it down to somehow fund health care for undocumented immigrants.
It's likely going to be in the thousands. That's something that the Office of Management and Budget and the entire team at the White House here, again, is unfortunately having to work on today. These meetings would not be happening if the Democrats had voted to keep the government open.
Donald Trump and Republicans have made clear they wanted to shut down the government. They want to inflict pain on the American people. They continue to engage in their retribution efforts.
There are things we can negotiate, differences we have, and we're not going to give taxpayer benefits to illegals, but don't hold the American people hostage with a government shutdown.
This is about health care. He is choosing to shut down the government rather than work with Democrats to fix the health care crisis Republicans created.
We did a reality check of that claim on the Pulse last night. Simply put, the claims that Democrats shut the government down in order to give undocumented immigrants health care is wrong. If you want to watch that, just scan the QR code right there at the bottom of your screen. We explained it all and sourced it as well. But right now, we want to take a closer look at what's impacted by this shutdown. Thousands of workers right now are told, don't come to work, you're furloughed, while essential workers are still reporting to work. But there's a catch. They won't get paid until the shutdown is finally over. The good news is they will get all their money back. So think FBI investigators, air traffic controllers, the postal workers, stuff like that. We also know national parks will largely stay open, although 2/3 of the workers are furloughed. A union leader for national park workers compared this shutdown to the one 7 years ago.
This current shutdown has a very similar feel to it because the divisions are so deep between, I guess, the two, I hate to use the word factions, but the two sides that are trying to, prove their point, stand up for what they believe is right. But in the long run, what's happening is that, the middle-class Americans are being hurt for it.
All right, if you're traveling, you know how important this is. Back to the air traffic control for a second. It's obviously a critical job, like TSA agents. But one former air traffic controller says it's not just the lack of pay that's an issue. It's also halting training and hiring, which he says is making a problem even worse.
Nationwide, there's a shortage of air traffic controllers, so any delay in training is going to affect that. The non-essential person, and they are very essential, the human resources, the training departments, the airspace and procedure departments, all the work that they're involved in day to day is going to come to a pause.
The bottom line is this shutdown is going to have an impact the longer it goes. But you can count on the Pulse to be here to sift through all of that noise and just give you the straight facts. I don't know about you. You look at your phone, you don't know what's real, what's not. Just throw that off to the side every night, and we got you covered extensively all week long. You can always go to our website, fox2detroit.com, or the Fox Local app. Check out our coverage anytime. Well, there's a lot happening outside the shutdown that you need to know about, so let's pick up the pace and run through some of the other big stories making news right now, starting with another horrific case of religious violence. 2 people are dead after a man drove a car into people outside a synagogue in northern England, got out and started stabbing them. The attack happening on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish year. Now, officers shot and killed the suspect. Authorities say he was wearing a vest that made it look like he may have had explosives, but police later said he didn't have a bomb. The Metropolitan Police Force there in London calling this a terror attack. Back here on U.S. soil, where an immigration judge denied this man's bid for asylum. Lawyers for Kilmar Abrego Garcia wanted to reopen his 2019 asylum case, but the judge shot that down. Abrego Garcia has 30 days to appeal. You'll remember he was wrongfully deported to El Salvador earlier this year. The Trump administration admits that was a mistake, but claims he's a gang member. Abrego Garcia denies this. He was brought back in June and then immediately charged with human smuggling. And the ACLU is stepping in to help a Metro Detroit man detained by ICE as he's battling a life-threatening case of leukemia. They want a bond hearing for Jose Contreras Cervantes, which could lead him a return to his family and doctors while his case works through court. He's at a detention facility about 3 hours away. The 33-year-old has lived here for about 20 years, but not legally. The ACLU says he has no criminal record besides minor traffic offenses. He was arrested in August during a traffic stop in Macomb County. His lawyers say he has 4 to 6 years to live. The Trump administration is refusing to grant bond hearings to immigrants if they came here illegally, even if they don't have a criminal record. All right, let's take you back 2 weeks for a second. Remember when this man was dominating the headlines? Jimmy Kimmel, suspended by ABC after controversial comments following Charlie Kirk's death. Well, he was reinstated last week, or I should say a week later, and the 2 major station groups that refused to air it on their stations brought it back soon thereafter. The reason we're talking about it now again? Well, multiple reports say FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr has agreed to testify before the Senate Commerce Committee. Now, that's expected to happen after November. Carr threatened the licenses of Disney and local stations that aired Kimmel's show, adding, quote, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way." But Senator Ted Cruz criticized those comments, calling them, quote, "dangerous as hell." Cruz chairs the Commerce Committee, which oversees the FCC. All right, we're not even through the midterms yet. Heck, we still have the Detroit mayoral race this year. So who's ready to talk about the 2028 presidential race? I can hear the crickets at your house already. We aren't either, but one person who's been rumored to run for a while is casting some doubt on that potential bid. We're talking about our own Governor Gretchen Whitmer. She spoke in Toronto yesterday and was asked by a Canadian journalist if she's considering running in 2028. Whitmer said she anticipates helping, but added, quote, "I don't know if I need to be the main character in the next chapter," end quote. The governor is term limited in 2026, and while many see her as a potential candidate, Whitmer repeated a familiar comment, saying she's focused on her current job as a leader of Michigan. And this new development on Detroit's only nightly political talk show, Detroit mayoral candidates Pastor Solomon Kinloch and Mary Sheffield have agreed to a debate right here as part of a special edition of The Pulse on October 27th at 7:30 p.m. We look forward to having a frank discussion, a talk, just the 3 of us, about what you care about. Let me know what you want to hear. We look forward to having these 2 candidates on this debate stage that the entire city will no doubt be watching on October 27th. We're talking about the attack in Grand Blanc after the break. A lot of you have been asking, what's the delay? Why are investigators staying so tight-lipped? We're taking these questions to a former FBI counter-terror operative next. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. We want to take a closer look now at the attack at the Grand Blanc church earlier this week. 4 people dead, 8 others hurt, and the gunman killed by police. Yesterday, we heard from hospital officials who treated several victims after the attack. The patients were between the ages of 6 and 78. Doctors say despite their efforts, one of the shooting victims did not survive.
Being the trauma surgeon on call and all of us hoping that everyone lives, it's hard. I think it's really hard to have somebody that is traumatically injured or for any reason die. I think unfortunately we probably have a sense that we're supposed to be able to save everybody, but we can't. As I walked into the emergency room, all these patients just started rolling through the door, one after the other, with wounds that you just never see in Grand Blanc, Michigan. For the little kids that got ushered out the exit door because they were shielded from a gunshot from a friend, I don't know if those wounds will heal. You know, our resident whose kids were at church with his wife while he was operating with me that night at the hospital, his kids will probably never be the same.
I had the chance to head out to Grand Blanc along with my colleagues. If you're watching from that area, we're thinking of all of you tonight. And we're also getting some unique perspective about the federal investigation. Former FBI counterterror and counterintelligence operative Eric O'Neill joins us via Zoom here on The Pulse tonight. And Eric, it's good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us here. I wish we didn't have to have these discussions, but they're critically important. I want to ask you a little bit about the religious violence in general. We heard, of course, what happened in London today. And it seems in both cases in Grand Blanc, Michigan or London, England, a vehicle was used. Talk for a moment about how these monsters are using their vehicles in order to kind of disrupt a peaceful day and then start their secondary attack, it seems.
Well, Rupert, it's good to talk to you. And unfortunately, we keep meeting like this in these tragic accidents. And yes, in this case, the level of violence was extraordinary. This individual not only slams his truck into the side of the church, which shows an express anger, sets things that appear, at least to law enforcement, like unexploded ordnance or explosive devices, and then shoots the church, shoots up the church and kills so many people. It was absolutely devastating. And in his wake, the church has burned to the ground. So yes, this is absolutely violent. And seeing this happen against religious organizations is just terrible. It
really is. And, you know, we heard in the days after that perhaps he had some kind of anger towards Mormons, although right now this is a federal investigation that the feds have kind of taken over in a sense with the assistance of the local agencies there, as is usually the case. Kind of lift the curtain for us. I know you can't speak specifically about what could be happening here, but why the silence? The people in this area deserve to understand what this guy may have been up to, what likely is happening behind the scenes to try to glean some light on what may have happened here.
I'll do my best. Unlike the last number of shootings, and of course we had the shooting at the ICE facility, we had the Charlie Kirk shooting, we had the prior shooting at a church, this attacker, this alleged shooter, who his life was ended in a shootout with the police, has not left a lot of evidence behind, at least not evidence that has been released by law enforcement. It looks like he had a very limited online presence, and that makes it a little bit difficult for the digital forensics to look through an online history and see if what has led to this attack. And it doesn't appear that he left some sort of manifesto or note, at least nothing that's been published so far by law enforcement.
Eric, I find this interesting, this part of the conversation, because, you know, you think back, you know, you and I are old enough to remember the Oklahoma City bombing and learning, of course, about the Michigan connection up here. There were so many ways in which investigators, without social media, had to do the tedious work of talking to people. Is this kind of more, if the person doesn't have a digital footprint, they kind of have to go old school and put the breadcrumbs together again, right?
That's right. Now, that's also always part of it. But remember, this was also a significant aspect of a crime for the FBI to address. There were special agent bomb technicians who had to clear the structure because you couldn't even start an investigation until you knew it was safe. Evidence response team who had to process the scene and collect evidence. Computer analysis and response team, that's what you're talking about, all the digital evidence and look on social media. And there was an arson investigation. So on top of all that, you have agents and law enforcement who have to interview people, you know, rattle doorknobs, beat their feet against the streets, and find out why the shooter might have done this, what was behind the motivations to do such an absolutely extreme act.
Excuse any ignorance when I ask this question, but does it make it easier or harder when it's a small town? I know there are, you know, big cities where things like this happen. There are small towns. Grand Blanc, I worked in Flint for a number of years in the 90s. It's a tight-knit community. Does that make people perhaps more tight-lipped? Does it help or hurt to have an investigation in a smaller town?
I think it does help because it's a smaller focus in the people that you need to talk to. And in smaller towns, people know each other well. Someone might have seen something. You're more likely to remember something about someone than in a big town when you might know your neighbors and a few people and no one else around you. They're all strangers, even though you're right next to each other. In a little town, that doesn't happen. So it does allow them to focus. But remember, they need to broaden out beyond this small town to other places where he's lived, to where he might have built up this apparent resentment for the LDS Church that might have been the motivation for this horrendous crime.
When you look at religious violence that we've seen again today in London, this in Grand Blanc in our own backyard, how do we put our heads around this and say, look, I'm not going to stop going to church or going to a place of worship, but I still want to feel safe? How do you balance that?
I mean, these kind of attacks are, in essence, terrorism, because they make a population afraid to do the things that give us joy, like go to church on Sunday morning. You know, in this case, at least it looks like he had a somewhat mental breakdown and a very unhealthy obsession with this church that could have led to this crime. And usually when you see a terrorist, they have some sort of ideology. Here, he had, I think, some sort of mental imbalance, as opposed to what we've seen in the past where it was politically motivated or ideologically motivated. And here it just seems that something in his mind broke, and he decided to expel that against the church.
Well, as a former FBI, you know how hard these feds are working right now to try to help and get to the answer. And we know that that's what they're doing 24/7. And we thank them for their hard work. And we thank you for your time to kind of peel back the curtain and talk about it here tonight. Eric O'Neill, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Rupe. Anytime.
We're having a cannabis conversation after the break. Lawmakers want to hike the wholesale tax by 24%. What would that do to the marijuana industry in Michigan? We're talking with Jerry Millen, the owner of Greenhouse of Walled Lake, about the impact this could have. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse, here to talk about the impact a proposed marijuana tax hike could have. Jerry Millen, the owner of Greenhouse of Walled Lake. And Jerry, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us here on The Pulse.
Thanks for having me, because it's an important topic.
Well, it is to a lot of people. So we have a couple different sections to hash out, if you will. And I use the
I caught that hash.
Yeah, but
nice pun.
Here's the deal. Here's the bottom line. All joking aside, this is no laughing matter. And the reason is because this is an industry that is
failing right now.
It's
on the brink of complete failure right now.
24% tax is what the proposal is.
Additional.
In addition to the taxes that you're already getting. So you had a 24% tax on wholesale cannabis. It's a hike. It would raise the estimated, I believe that's a tax there.
Yeah, they say it's going to raise $420 million over time.
Okay, so the tax would raise $420 million.
For the roads.
And it would be used to fund road construction. So bottom line is they're using tax hike money from marijuana industry to fund the roads.
But a third of the taxes that are being used right now on marijuana are supposed to be used for the roads. So do our politicians do they know what roads they're repairing?
Bottom line is they believe they need more money in order to fund everything they need. They want to make sure that kids are eating at school. They want to make sure the roads, $1.2 billion, are funded. And they are looking at one of the newest industries and saying, this is where we're going to shoulder some of the burden here.
Right, and it's wrong, because kids need to eat. We need health care. We need all that. But at the end of the day, marijuana is a medicine. After college, I stopped using cannabis. I can't believe I'm an advocate for it now, because I was totally against it until 20 years ago. And I met kids that were dying, having seizures. I've met cancer patients. I've worked with people at my store that are dying all the time. And it is such it changed the way I looked at things, you know, because this affects people. And so they're on budgets, they're on limited budgets, and what they're saying is a 24% tax.
Would that be passed along to the consumer?
Yes, but also on medical marijuana, which has a 6% tax already. If it's medical marijuana, there's no tax on Pfizer pharmaceuticals, so why is there a 6% tax now? You want to make it a 30% tax on medical marijuana? They've almost killed medical marijuana. The Greenhouse of Walled Lake is probably the only store in Oakland County that still sells medical.
So you're telling me that the people who use medical marijuana are going to have to pay way more?
Absolutely,
if this goes through.
The industry right now is failing. About 35 stores have shut down in the past 60 days. Grows are shutting down. Go into a cannabis store, they're empty right now. We're not doing that well. We're not making billions of dollars. We have a thing called 280E. Our federal income tax is insane. We can't write off employees. We can't write off rent. We can't write off anything, because we're considered drug traffickers, which we're not. We're helping people.
$5 billion I think it was something, what was the dollar amount? It's how many billions of dollars have come in? $2 billion in 5 years?
Yeah, the money's insane. And so where are they spending it? They won't touch online gaming. They want to come after, and to me it's about the patients and the recreational users, because a lot of people use cannabis recreationally and find out, wow, it helps me sleep, it helps me with arthritis. We have 80 and 90-year-olds every day in our store. We do seminars at retirement homes. This will affect the people because we have to pass that tax on. We're not getting rich. People think, oh, I'm going to sell weed, you're going to get rich. Not true. It's a hard business. 280E, we don't make any money. That tax has to be passed on, and they're hiding it, saying it's a wholesale tax. It's not. It's a tax on you. It's going to be passed on. 30% on medical, 40% on recreation.
So bottom line right now, you have two lawmakers that have been pretty vocal, one in Hazel Park, one in Detroit, who say, I won't vote on this bill if this 24% hike is there. But what about the rest of the lawmakers? What do you think is going to happen here?
You know, here's the problem. I think that most of our lawmakers have not been in a dispensary, don't know patients. I know some of them, they use cannabis, but I think the majority of them are clueless to our industry. I invite any lawmaker to come into my store, meet my patients, and tell me that this will not affect families. This will 100% affect families. I'm not here to make money, Roop. We've been very successful. My family's blessed. I'm here to help people now because it feels so good. And this is BS. Call your senator because they're going to vote tomorrow, and they're saying it's going through because if it doesn't, the government's going to shut down. They're that inept that a marijuana tax can shut our government down. What are they doing in Lansing?
What's the viability of, you think, everyone calling their senator to say that this needs to happen when a government shutdown in many people's eyes would be far worse for those who don't use marijuana, right?
They were going to vote on Tuesday. We had a big rally. I'm part of the MICIA. I was out of town and couldn't make it. Huge rally. They delayed the vote. We flipped some votes. Senator Jeff Irwin's been a huge advocate for us. He's trying to help us flip votes. I hope it doesn't pass because I'm telling you right now, if it does, the marijuana community is huge. We will remember you. And the people that are paying tax on this will remember you. We'll vote you out because this is BS. We voted for a 10% tax on marijuana in 2019. They're circumventing your vote. They don't care what you voted for. They're putting a wholesale tax so you don't see it on the receipt. If they put it on the receipt and you see a 30% tax on medical, you're going to freak. 40% tax on recreational, they don't want it on the receipt because they're lying to you. It's not a wholesale tax. It's got to get passed on or we're all out of business.
Perhaps it's both. It's a wholesale tax, but it's also a tax that will be passed on to people who are using this for medical.
Right, but they're saying it's a wholesale tax. Why not just come out and say, hey, we're going to put it on the receipt? Because they don't want to get the backlash.
We saw how many people with the backlash, speaking of which, were at the Capitol. Are there more people out there that we didn't see?
Yes, there were people there today, and they're going to vote by tomorrow. That's why call your senator. Tell them you don't agree with this. This is a medicine.
What would be a reasonable tax hike if that's sustainable in the marijuana industry? If it's not 24%
right now,
hike.
For retailers and growers, anybody stay in business?
8%?
0 right now.
No, but I'm saying if you can't do 24,
listen,
what would you tell
5, 6, put it on online gaming, put it more on cigarettes, put more on cannabis, 5%, 6%. Spread it out, spread the love. We're not a bunch of stoners like some of these people think. That's why I invite politicians that they're voting on things they don't understand. Understand the industry, then pass the law.
Well, we want people to understand this particular side of it because we think it's really important, and perhaps people hadn't heard it. So, Jerry, we thank you for making that happen
problem,
here on The Pulse. That is The Pulse for tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Rup Raj. As always, it was good to be with you.